And good evening, everybody. Welcome to a all-new episode of Holotheatre. As always, I'm Dan Tartagleone, also known as DTartag1. Joining me today from on location is the Corian himself, Kendall Hallman. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. Coming live from Travis's basement.
We'll get a little bit more.
Just finished. 12 card there is good in him. Beat Hunt Down Virtual against a new player.
Oh,
it's a good night so far.
Nope, not going to say it. But joining us as our special guest for the first time is Matt Manning. How are you doing today, Matt?
I'm good. I got to admit, Kendall, I have a little bit of basement envy, right? I know it's not your basement, but like this basement actually beats my office, which is just filled with crap, essentially. So that's a damn cool basement. But Dan, really happy to be on the show. This has been kind of a long time coming. We've been talking about it. So
so Travis has his DVD collection. He's got all his retro video game consoles.
So while Kendall is giving us a silent tour of the basement, why don't we? So we're on tonight to talk about the 2022 Content Creators of the Year. Kendall and Matt were the co-content creators of the year. Matt does his channel over on YouTube. You pre-record all your stuff, but you produce a lot of great content. Not only Star Wars CCG stuff, but a lot of other stuff as well. And for those who aren't familiar with what Kendall does, why are you watching Holotheatre?
But yeah. Turn off Holotheatre and go listen to my podcast.
Holotheatre first, because we're under the we're about an hour. Your podcast runs for a little bit over sometimes. But before we get into our interview today, let's go ahead and check on what's going on with the PC. Let's go ahead and get into some announcements and everything. First up, the Champions League is still going on. Right now, we are into the top four. We are currently waiting on information regarding the Chris Kelly and the Joe Olsen match, as well as the Matthew Harrison Trainer and Connor Britton match. Again, it is a one-game playoff where Chris and Matt will be picking the side that they want to play. Their opponent will play the opposite side. And then once we get into the finals, it is a full match. Both players will be playing both light and dark side in that match. Once we have more information, make sure you guys stay tuned to the forums, Slack, Facebook, and Twitter. And that way we can get all the information on when these gentlemen will be playing their last couple of games. Also, the Gem PC is right around the corner. According to the sheriff himself, he's looking at a start date right around January 10th. I know he's getting some top men out there to talk about, to set up the bracket and everything. So once the bracket is released, we'll go ahead and spoil it. Maybe next week on Holotheatre, I don't know. But I know signups are currently closed, but we're at about 100 people for the tournament, so that's a good number of people right there. And then speaking of events, that is on GEP. Speaking of other events, the San Diego Super Open is about 2 weeks away. Right now we have 25 players signed up for it. Pre-registration has closed, but if you're interested in going, please make sure you sign up. It's going to be a fun event. I won't be there. I was supposed to be there, but unfortunately, I start work that week at a new job. So I will unfortunately have to sit this one out. And then coming up really quick is the 2023 OCS. You're less than a month away from the start date on that. So if you want to sign up, it's $50 for the entire event, $10 for each month. You will save $10 for signing up for the entire season. So all you got to do is click on the event details and sign up for it. It's really simple. And then if you were paying attention last week, Chris Kelly is looking for some more people to volunteer on design and development. This is under the announcements portion of the forums. You can read the article saying about what they're looking for on the design and development team, as well as the competitive balance team and the player card development team. All of those really, it's a really good way of helping out the PC. Again, if you're not looking just to design a card, working with the competitive balance team. They are the people who decide on what kind of tweaks and stuff that they to make towards the cards that we see play. Player development team, that is the team that works with the players who are awarded special beat cards, such as like the Advocate Awards, the Volunteer of the Year Award, and so forth. And then the donation program, again, is live. If you're looking to get some sweet deck box, make sure you donate to the PC. I believe this is one of the few ways that you guys can get these sweet, sweet deck boxes. So make sure you donate. Right now, the most popular one is the Boba Fett. I myself am a big fan of the Thrawn and the Hera. So I don't know, Kendall, what's your favorite?
What's my favorite
Of the deck box of the new deck boxes?
I think I ended up getting a Grievous. I like the BB-8 one a lot too.
Mm-hmm.
I went with the Grievous. I like Grievous. I feel like I'm the only guy in the world that thinks Grievous is not cringy. I like Grievous. Big fan.
I like Grievous too.
But I mean, this is my deck box right here. So
okay, that's enough said. Like, you have your own custom-made deck box. I mean, that's because you're special. As a content creator of the year, you deserve it.
Cool,
but speaking into our content creators of the year, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about Matt Manning. Let's go ahead and find out what makes him tick, what he got into with Star Wars CCG, and talk about like what he's got going on with his YouTube channel. I know that Kendall is our other co-creator, but I think at this point, a lot of people like to hear, like we all know that Kendall is a podcast guru. He creates a lot of his music videos. You do a lot, Kendall.
I do some stuff. Yep, and working on 2 new projects, Corrin in the House and Top 8 with Corrin and Batmouse.
So you're bringing back 0-2 with Batmouse, but now it's the Top 8. I don't get how
it's not. It's a completely different premise. The only similarity is that it will be me and Batmouse. Yeah, I hinted. I teased it a little bit. Taco Bill is also going to be involved.
Okay, so that gives some credibility.
That's all
to
I'll say for now.
I mean, I don't know. Like, when was the last time Batmouse made a Top 8?
Well, Batmouse is going to make a Top 8 on every episode of Top 8 with Corrin and Batmouse.
Okay,
that's what I'll say. That's what I'll say. That's all I can say.
Well,
everything else, my producers won't let me say anymore.
I don't know. I think
I got non-disclosure agreement.
I don't know. If we talk to Puppet Chris Kelly, I think he'll allow it.
Yeah. Well, there will be more as more details arrive. This was just a brainchild that I recently came up with.
Okay.
I'm gonna go ahead and sign off now. I will check out the interview with Matt. So make sure you ask him good questions.
I will try.
Let me think. But before, let me think. Okay, Matt. If I found a garbage bag full of cards in my basement, how much is it worth? I just need you're the
most exhausting question.
You're the finance expert. I need a number. Just give me a number.
Let me get back to you on that, Kendall. Let me get back to you on that.
Sorry, I need a number. I need a number right now. It was a garbage bag.
Okay.
I don't know what Star Wars is. I've never seen a Star Wars movie. It's got pictures of characters on it. How much is it worth?
At least $350.
I don't know. I can't tell you. It looks like eBay is probably your best. That's why I always tell me, just put it on eBay. You want to know what market is? Put it on eBay.
Talk to Brian.
Sounds good. Brian Fred said shit. That's what he said.
Language.
You told me to say it. You know.
No, I didn't.
But
I will say this.
It's a quote. It's for journalism.
Before you go, I don't know. I think Jared said this on the awards show, but you both are going to be highlighted in the Holotheatre Host and Hero packs. I don't know. Like, I know Kendall, he's already part of it. You have the Cad Bane card, so you'll actually get another one into that pack. You'll be on Series 3 along with.
Can I get a copy of it this time?
Yes, you'll get a copy of it.
Okay. Because I never got a copy of my first one.
Well, I apologize. And then Matt, you'll get your own card. You'll be in the heroes section, so you'll be a kind of a chase card. You'll both be like a chase card. I'll get those sent out, and then we'll get those sent out to you. And yeah, so any virtual full art virtual card that you want, as long as somebody hasn't grabbed it already, as long as it's a full art virtual card, you'll get your image on said card, and it will be a legal PC approved AI image.
And
Awesome.
this is an amazing moment because I've never been a chase card in my life. Just like never been, so this is just like a big deal to me, right? It's just never been the category of chase anything. So it's first
Bill
time.
is saying that you could be General Grievous.
I mean, I'll have to check out what the AI General Grievous looks like. I can't remember.
I mean, all we would do is we would put you on the card, your face on the card.
Okay.
I'll actually, after the show, I'll send you some examples of them so that way you can get a good idea of it. But yeah, I think
are there any full art?
I do wish I had 4 arms and a terrible cough, right? That's sort of what I want. It's like that's the goals right there.
I mean, all
are
we
there
gotta
any
do is
full
get,
art Jedi?
if we can get you on like 2 lightsabers, I guess we could Photoshop you to have 4 arms, but
He has 4 arms, right? Or is it? I can't remember. I think he has 4 arms, right?
4 arms and 2 legs.
He has, I think, 6 arms.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's 6 arms.
It's just like Revenge of the Sith. They just chop them off so quickly. It's like
yeah.
hard to remember.
I mean, Kendall, you don't sound like a General Grievous expert here.
A General Grievous. I don't sound like a General Grievous expert.
Yeah.
I mean,
you're a Cad Bane expert.
I was there. I was there when General Grievous was introduced in Clone Wars in the Genndy Tartakovsky series. I remember that.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I'm sure that it is. I am sure that I'm almost positive that it's 6 arms. He's got the 2 regular arms and then like the additional arms come out.
How about this?
Yeah.
I'll make you a deal.
Checks out.
I'll make you a deal, Kendall. If he has 6 arms, when the next time we're at a tournament, you can design a T-shirt and I wear it, whatever you want it to wear, like I did with Batmouse. But if I'm right with 4 arms, you have to do the same thing.
Okay.
Okay, we have this on video. Bill is our witness. Matt is our witness.
Minute 14. Okay, it's there.
Sure.
Okay, there we go.
I have wanted to make a hat because we have the no reverts hat and the yes reverts hat, and I have wanted to make a hat that says I usually will say yes to a revert if it's a casual game or if no additional information has been gathered, unless I don't like the person or something like that, because everybody always has a paragraph of text on whether or not they'll grant a revert. Seriously, I gotta go, guys.
Okay, have fun.
Matt, anytime you want to do Corrin on the horn,
sure.
you have a standing
chat.
invite.
I
will see you guys later.
Take care, Kendall. Okay, Matt. So let's get back to our little interview.
Sure.
You are on YouTube. For those who don't know, let's go ahead. I'm actually going to pull up your website to show it off a little bit. But let's start off with the generalized question of what got you in. Why did you start putting out all the videos that you have put out in the last year or so?
Yeah, it's been a year. I think almost exactly a year. I put out the first sort of videos, and so let me rewind and say that growing up, I was sort of a Decipher fanboy, right? Like I loved everything Decipher put out, and that started with Star Wars CCG, and it kind of evolved into the Lord of the Rings game, and even had a little bit of the Young Jedi stuff. So, during COVID, and I feel like this is a really common narrative that I'm telling right now. During COVID, I was cleaning out the closet and I found my stuff, right? I'm like, oh, and I was never great, right? Because I was also kind of, like the kid, I was like the 13-year-old at the library that was getting like murdered by the college students playing. So I wasn't great, but I had a decent collection, and I kind of thought, well, what if I started completing these? And then I started to realize that there was just lots of people that had that exact same story, right? They're coming out of COVID, and whether they're a former player or they just collected this stuff, they are interested in getting engaged again. And one thing I'll say about the PC is you guys have been doing just great work as far as keeping this alive and keeping it going. And I kind of dabble in a lot of other dead or out of print CCGs, which, I talk about a little bit later, but I just thought, well, what if I create a little bit of a roadmap for people that are doing the exact same path I'm on, right? So they're going to start by finding their stuff. Like, Kendall's question, what's this shoebox of cards worth? I don't know, but that question's asked like once a week. This was the second most popular game after Magic for 5 or 6 years, right? Mm-hmm. So there is a potential player base in like the hundreds of thousands, right? There are tens of thousands of shoeboxes of cards, and a lot of them have been sort of, gobbled up or, garage sales or estate sales or whatever. But the fact is that there is, 100,000 people that were playing this game in the US. Like, I grew up in a small town in Michigan, and we had tournaments at our local library, right? And I'm thinking,
Yeah.
if a town of 5,000 had 30 guys at a library playing a tournament, what did a town of 10,000 or 20,000 or large cities? So there is a lot of latent potential that this game has, and yeah, 20 years is a long time. It's been out of print, and I think that's one of the big things that I really emphasize as well. Like, it's okay that it's out of print, guys. It's like, let it go. Like, whenever I hear the conversations of what if Decipher got the license back, I'm like, oh, that's the most outrageous fantasy. Like, just be happy with the reality we're in, right? Like, that's okay. So anyway, I just kind of started doing videos of stuff like as I kind of explored and figured it out myself,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, oh, like here's where, the ultra rare foils were printed, like this, or, R1 versus R2 in Premiere, and sort of a lot of the early channel stuff, I would say like January to June, was just sort of my own figuring it out. Like, AIs are one in every four in Coruscant and Theed, except Theed, they were screwed up. It's like all this like weird little trivia stuff that if you're bored enough during COVID, you're like, huh, this is a fun puzzle to crack. And then, I do want to get back into playing, and that's what I played in the Retro League this past year, and I've done a series of these sort of deck videos going over, sort of retro decks, because I think for a lot of people that's what they're really familiar with. And virtual cards just take a little bit of graduation to get up to, right? Like, you can get there, but the more familiar you are with the mechanics, and if you're learning that from something like a hidden base deck, that you love to play and Premiere to Death Star 2 format, that's going to create those sort of like good neural pathways that are like, hey, this is a fun experience, right? Like, hey, I'm curious about learning about set 19 or set 20 that's coming out. I think that that's sort of what I viewed as like the sort of pathway there. You start out, maybe find the collection, you want to complete it, and then you're like, well, I built some decks, right? And so a lot of what I did early on was just sort of my own journey there, and I just thought it'd be fun to create resources for other people and kind of a spot to hang out. And I know you guys have been doing a great job as well. It's just sometimes it's just different communities of people that click through on YouTube as well.
So like you said that you just like got back onto the retro leagues and everything. Like, I understand that like there is like a little bit of a learning curve, especially with like all of the defensive shields, and it's now with the new virtual cards. I mean, because we did have a reset, we had a revert. I mean, we had a bunch of virtual cards back in the day and everything. So what stops you from going just head first into open?
Honestly, it's like the card pool right now, right? Like, I think like a video I've been toying about making, and maybe this is something we can collaborate on, is like the 100 essential virtual cards, right? Or 50 essential virtual cards. Like, the pool is what, 500 plus, mm-hmm. right? Plus, I mean, I think the errata is actually more daunting to me, right? Because it's like, at this point, sometimes like errata, it's like I've errated twice, possibly. So it's like finding the card and then errataing it. And that's just a lot of things to kind of keep track of. But I think, what are the 50 cards that everybody runs, right? Like that could be useful. And perhaps there's already some guide like that, but I've been kind of toying with an idea of, if you want to get a virtual cards, here's the 50 that you need to know, right? Versus the other 450 mm-hmm. that are used.
And it's kind of funny that you mentioned that, because I know for a fact that the PC is actually working on getting something like that together. Kendall and I don't know if you're familiar with him, but Crazy Carl Koenig.
Mm-hmm.
They're both working on it currently, and it's going to be a little bit of an endeavor, just like to say, like, okay, here are like the main virtual cards you want. Here are the backings and everything. So there is something that is coming up down the line. Just as a little bit of spoiler for everybody, I know it's good to have these little hey, this is up and coming and everything. So
yeah. I mean, I think just stuff like that, because I do think that you had this huge COVID increase, and I would also say that I played Magic, not like super competitively, but I played with friends and at the local store, and Magic is reaching a point of like high frustration for a lot of people, and so you're gonna have people looking for new games, right? And right now, some of those people are going to look back and think like, hey, maybe some of the best ideas aren't coming out in 2022. Maybe they came out in 1999, right? Like maybe some of the best game engines, right? Like, or, and that's kind of like, why I talk about these like out of print games is I think just because something's out of print doesn't mean it was a failure, right?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean that it was a bad idea. It just means it's from 20 years ago, right? And just like how The Godfather might be one of your favorite movies, because it was from 40 years ago at this point, that doesn't mean it's like bad. It just means it's so that's sort of like one of the big theses that I play with a lot is, I think that there was some really good ideas and really good game engines
Mm-hmm.
and Magic ended up winning out, right? So there's this consolidation in the CCG, TCG market with Magic from like 2007 on. And I think that like it's created a real dearth of ideas and lack of diversity and a really uninteresting gaming scene where it's like no one actually plays Pokemon, right? And it's like
Yeah.
it's like no adults are sitting there like a tournament playing, but Magic is like cornered it, and they've been really kind of abusive to players the last couple of years. And so people like Matt Sperling, I think is a really good example, are looking for other outlets. And I think that there's a really good opportunity if you kind of create this bridge of like, hey, you experience this game for 3 or 4 years growing up in 2000 or whatever, let's say 99 to 2001 to near the end. You played Magic, you love playing cards. Why not create sort of like a roadmap to bring those people over here? Even if you only get 0.001, there's 35 million Magic players in the world. 0.001 is 3,500 people or something, right? Forgive me if my math is off here, but it's still a large community of people.
Yeah, and I know like you're reaching out right now. You have almost 630 subscribers just on your channel alone. Um, but now, have you noticed that a lot of them are pertaining to Star Wars, as an example, or like are they just like a mixture of the card games that you show off?
I think so. I would say 70% of the stuff I probably do is Star Wars related. I do a little bit of Lord of the Rings, which is also a Decipher product.
Mm-hmm.
Then I kind of dabble. I think I'm going to do something on the Harry Potter game just because I found some of it as swap meet. So, but I think there's a lot of fun games that are interesting, but I think that a lot of them are definitely Star Wars CCG. And what I've seen is
Mm-hmm.
that stuff plays well. Like that was like I said, it was game number 2 for a long time behind Magic
Yeah.
and was sold in every store across the US. So
Oh
there's
yeah.
just a bigger following. And also it's Star Wars. At the end of this is what the one thing that I talk about. Why is Star Wars CCG so relevant still today? I mean, it's partially IP, right? Like people
Mm-hmm.
don't like I have unfortunately inherited my mom's Beanie Babies, and it's like they're worthless because what is the Beanie Baby IP, right? Like, is it a
Yeah.
universe? Is it a story? Is it a like a what? It's nothing, right? It doesn't mean anything. No one has any fond memories of like this Beanie Baby and this Beanie Baby, whatever. It's crap. But like Star Wars is real fancy IP, right? Like everybody knows it, and that makes the game already more accessible and familiar than something that's like you know I don't know, even Magic. I don't understand how Magic is successful. I don't want to talk about it too much, but it's like you can't even figure out what the heck the story is. It's like you're on the plains of Dominaria. It's like what are you doing here? But
Yeah, I mean, Magic does have like a little bit of a story behind it. Like a lot of games don't have that. I know. I mean, right now, like the biggest popular games are Magic, Pokemon, and Yu-Gi-Oh.
yeah.
Like you were saying, there's IP behind those. Like Pokemon, what I don't think it would be nearly as big as it could be if it didn't have the Nintendo backing with all the IP and the familiarity from the original games. Now, I mean, at the same point though, like you were saying, nobody really plays Pokemon. They're just collectors. Like
And
I
so
know.
that's one thing that like I think as well, like you can strike a happy balance of like collecting and playing. Like I'm a big tent guy. That's like where I've always been. I think that you can create a world where like you can have people that play the game and you can have people that collect the game
Mm-hmm.
because there's going to be crossover because every time I will just say like on the channels first off, I had no idea that people were even going to watch this stuff. I just started doing like 600 subscribers is way more than I thought. If I had 100, I would be like, oh, that's cool. Like, so
Mm-hmm.
it's been pretty surprising, but I think it shows that there's an appetite. And I would say like at least once a week I have a comment on a video that says I'd really like to get into this game, right? Like this game, talking Star Wars specific, like this game
Mm-hmm.
seems really interesting. How do I learn how to play it, right? Like how do I get more involved? And they might have come because oh, this is interesting to watch a guy open a pack. I don't know what this is. And like, oh, these are cool cards. I'd like to learn more. How do I do that? So
Yeah.
collecting might be the entry vehicle, but ultimately, like, it's a game. People want to play a game, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think you can have both.
I agree 100% because like I noticed like on your channel, for example, three of your most popular videos are based around collecting. Your two most popular ones right now are your top 10 most difficult things to collect and your state of the market in July of 2022. I mean, understanding like from the collecting point where in your like you said your 10 most popular things to collect or difficult things to collect. I just watched that one earlier. I found it interesting because one, you didn't say anything regarding the Japanese stuff with Star Wars. Like,
I just am not. I'm like Japanese stuff just doesn't do it for me, right? Like
mm-hmm.
because I think that that's a product where you want to talk about like speculation. I feel like there's a little too much speculation happening, especially with Hoth R1s, where it's like, do you have a death mark? Okay, that's worth $1,200, so I actually think like I would argue that that's the sort of eye-popping numbers in like eBay sales that don't do
Yeah.
much because they're not super explainable. Like if you can't explain it on like a post-it note, it's like, well, the reason Hoth R1s are rare is because there was a shorter printing run, and actually the Japanese run was short. It's like this is getting too complicated. Like I can tell you why a shiny Darth Maul foil is like why that's valuable. I'm like, oh, it's an ultra rare foil, and it's Darth Maul, a beloved character. I'm like, oh, okay, that's why that's sought. I can't tell you why like a Wampa, like a red card with a Wampa on it with like Luke hanging. I'm trying to remember with the Frozen Dinner, right? That's the one that's like hanging upside down. I can't really tell you why that's $1,200, and I think most normal people don't understand that either, and that sort of creates this veil of like inaccessibility. I think, right?
Yeah, and I think the only person who could really talk to you about like the difference in the pricing and everything is Brian Fred.
Yeah,
I mean, I know that from example for firsthand because he actually helped me build a Japanese collection, and just getting some of the stuff was just a pain because of the whole R1, R2, dark side versus light side and everything. But and then I also watched, like I said, I watched your state of the market in July 2022. You don't have a lot of those. Like you have like there. It seems like they're every couple of months.
yeah. I mean, so my background, like as a person, like I'm an economist, right? So like I think of things as markets, like this is like my daily job, but like I don't want to make this an economic show. Like I think there's something really interesting happening when you have nostalgia, collecting, and markets all meeting, right? Like that's sort of this trifecta that I think is super interesting because things typically run in 15 to 20 year nostalgia cycles. So for example, what's really interesting right now, what happened like 15 to 20 years ago, right? It was like Lord of the Rings and like 15 to 20 years ago those movies were all coming out, and you have a whole slew of new Lord of the Rings stuff. The Lord of the Rings TCG is like, it's kind of like lagging behind Star Wars, but like prices of that stuff is like tripled or whatever. So it's just like, I think that's really interesting. I think that's interesting to talk about how like it's kind of predictable. What was popular in 2003 and 4, like WoW TCG. Mm-hmm. You're going to see like WoW Classic relaunch. You're going to see, like it's I don't know. I think that's kind of fun to think about, and like how nostalgia, especially games that people played when they're like 13, 14, 15, didn't have any money. And now they're like 35 and they're like, oh, turns out I have some disposable income, right? Like, I need this thing called a hobby because people say I don't have one. So now I got into collecting little cardboard cards, and now this is my hobby. So yeah, I don't want to do too much of the market and collecting stuff because I think like fundamentally, I don't want to just be like my takes on stuff. I'd rather kind of be a good mixture of like, there's some deck videos, there's some pack openings, there's some, interviews with different people like Jim Colson. But I don't want to do the market stuff too often because I truly do the market stuff to try to build and create information for people. Like if you're coming in, you're like, oh, I want to get a set of Premiere. It's like, okay, how much should that be? I don't know. Like, I've never used eBay before, right? Or, you know, like, it's strange to say that, but like some people just come in, they're like, I don't know how this works. And they end up overpaying and they have a bad experience. And, then they just
Yeah.
let that sit in their closet. And so I think that having these like spreadsheets or discussions, it's like, okay, like this is what you should pay X amount for this set or this card. And that sort of
Mm,
transparency, I think, helps people feel like this is more accessible. So I think that's what I do. I don't do it necessarily. I mean, it gets a lot of views because I think people, it's always like an iceberg where like the players are the visible part of the iceberg. And then there's that other 90% that's under the water. Those are the collectors that are actually bidding on stuff on eBay. I think that, Star Trek is like that as well, and a bunch of these other games. But this is what happens when you make a great looking game is people
yeah.
want to buy it, right? It's just, it looks great. Like, look at the cards, they're well made, they're good looking pictures. I will say this as someone who's done a lot of stuff with other dead card games. Star Wars is by far the best looking one. It's just a lot of them look goofy, just like
And,
bad.
and I think you were talking about this in your Jim Colson interview. Uh, a lot of the stuff from this game was made canon. And like for example, like the Crate Dragon was
Yeah,
a card that came up from this. Like, there was a lore that came up, characters' names. I don't think there's another card game out there that actually has that can say it. Like, I mean, yes, Magic has their own IP, all their stuff. They can just do whatever they want. Pokemon, I mean, it ties in with the games, but it comes from the games. Like, I mean, that was one of the nice things about Decipher. Like, back in the day when I was cracking packs as a kid, I loved just like, oh, this card, like, I don't remember this from the movie. Oh, this is that guy. Like, I never knew. Gosh, I'm so. I,
all of the aliens in the cantina,
yeah,
right?
all
They
the
were there
aliens
for
in the
like,
cantina,
a
the alien
microsecond.
that ratted out Han and Chewie to the troopers. Like, I never knew he had a name until I pulled him from a pack.
Yeah. No, I think that's like Decipher did a really great job with this game, and obviously whatever happened at the end, it happened. There was politics, and Decipher imploded on itself.
Yeah.
Um, but one of my dreams is to, Jim Colson told me that he could maybe get in touch with Warren Holland, and I would love to talk with Warren Holland, who's the CEO of Decipher. That'd be
Oh
like a
yeah.
really cool conversation, and I'm in the DC area, so it's possible he's just Decipher is based an hour south, so I have this dream as well of just finding like a cache at a estate sale, right? Like it's like
Oh yeah.
it's
I think
not
that's the
crazy,
dream.
right?
I mean, you go to like one of these estate sales or storage locker auction. I mean, the PC has their storage locker. I want to say it's in Philadelphia. I mean, who's to say that 20 years down the line, like Scott and Jared forget about the locker and then it comes up on auction?
Right. I think my scenario is specifically it's a Decipher exec that has all this stuff, right? Because they got it as part,
Mm-hmm.
being an exec. It was a big company, so you could say there's, let's say 50 executives, and they're just, not really thinking about it. They're in the DC metro area now, and I don't know. That's sort of something I think about a lot. So I'm always garage selling in the weekend. So that's where you can find me on Saturdays and Sundays is going to garage sales. So
That's a good goal. I mean, I like hearing about that. So, with your content and your YouTube channel, um, what are some of like the challenges that as a content creator you face?
feeding the algorithm, right? So I try to do 2 videos a week, and it is exhausting to find. It's not just filming it, but it's like finding ideas and
Mm-hmm.
the energy for it. I have a series I did with Andy Talaga on deck videos and sort of like showing off retro deck series. And I remember one night we filmed like 4 of them in a row, and I was just like near the end, I was like, I'm so tired of like
Yeah.
sitting, just like clicking through like GIMP stuff. So I think it's just like keeping pace and full-time job, all that sort of stuff. So it's also just finding the time for this stuff, and it's enjoyable. I like doing it, but it's the creativity piece where it's like, what am I gonna do? Like I filmed, I think I have like 4 videos right now in the hopper, so I'm good for like
Okay.
2 weeks. I'm like, okay, what else am I gonna do? What's another interesting idea? Like one of the things I want to do is I want to talk to Scott Church, who runs Category One Games. Really interesting guy. He just started selling Star Wars stuff again,
Yeah.
but it's like I gotta set it up, and it's just the sort of it's like it's not as much work obviously as like a small business, but there's just a lot of logistics that I didn't know were going to be there, like organizing Jim Colson's calendar. That was like a four month battle finding a time that worked for me and Jim. It was like, they had to go weeks and weeks out. So that's been the biggest challenge. It's just and I would say staying consistent. And I think one of the things I'm going to be doing in the new year is getting a bit more into board games. That's, I want to keep doing Star Wars stuff, but I'll probably do 2 videos a month and get a little more into board games, because that's
Okay.
really what I thought I was going to be doing. Is I thought I was going to maybe review board games, and then it turns out I just hate video editing. So it's like hard to do.
Yeah.
It's like it was just, it's so tedious to like string together a bunch of videos with captions and fun of if there's any video editors out there, shoot me a note, because it's just, but yeah, I want to get a little more into board game stuff, because I think that's also a community this is all sort of concentric circles, right? These are all the same type of sort of people interested in board games. You can see all this crap over my shoulder here. It's ultimately gaming. It's something I love doing as a kid. And I want to kind of find avenues to keep doing it, even if I can't find, a cool basement like Kendall to play in. So
I hear you. Believe me, I hear you. Now, speaking of board games, I know if you ever get in contact with him, Bastian Winkelhaus actually is a board game designer for a company. So
cool.
He might be a little bit of somebody that you would want to interview at some point. I
know
he's a 3-time world champion for our game, so maybe getting him involved into your show would be another good avenue for you.
Yeah, I would love to actually talk with open players. I think that's one of the things. I think a lot of the stuff is retro. That's just what I'm most familiar with. But I'd love to kind of talk with, open players and kind of do that. Like I said, I'll probably be doing, I think, 2 to 3 videos a month on Star Wars CCG and a couple on Lord of the Rings, and then try to do a bit more board game stuff. But
Okay.
I'd love to kind of, what's it like playing an open, or the top 8, etc. So. But that's kind of a good idea, getting a hold of Bastion as well, or even sort of the European take on stuff. What it's like. What's the German Star Wars CCG scene like?
From what I hear, it's really good. I know that we were supposed to do Worlds over there this year. Unfortunately, some issues came up, and we pushed it back to 2024. So, but that's looking at next year.
It's funny, all these like little places. Like, I feel like Germany has a big community, and then there's also like the Netherlands randomly, or Netherlands, Belgium, but not really France, right? Like, I haven't really met any French guys, but I've met a lot of I've met like 10 Dutch guys. I'm like, what do you? It's kind of a funny, or like Scandinavia has a bunch, but I've never really met any like Italian. I don't know. It's just like where these communities live.
That's fair. Yeah, I can't think of I think Angelo might be Italian. I'm not 100% sure on that one, but according to Jared, February 4th is the Holotheatre Regional. So again, if you're looking to travel over to Europe, there's a good avenue for anybody who wants to go over in Europe and play.
I'm going to take my wife to Europe. She's going to be like, "We're going to Europe." I'm like, "That's right. We're going to Europe for a Star Wars card tournament. I swear, it's going to be cool."
That's when you just give her a little extra money for sightseeing and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, that's the other thing is I maybe, to your question, why I've gotten more into open is I'm not actually great at this game. Like I'm like, there's something about coming back to it and like just being so accustomed to the pacing of Magic, where it's like a 15-minute experience, and now you truly have like an hour 20 sometimes that you're going to be spending. It's just like a change that has taken some adjusting. So I think my GEMP record is definitely below 500 right now. So
I don't think like anybody really looks at the GEMP records unless you're Bat Mouse or Justin Desai or Joe Olson at this point. But I mean, a lot of people do like to play it for fun. I mean, the Retro League, from what I've seen, can be a lot of fun because it does bring all those older formats into play. Like, when was the last time somebody actually wanted to play Premiere, or like I said, Premiere to Death Star 2 is another good one. But I know Jared does a really nice job with Retro League. I thought about signing up for it just to crack my teeth on it a little bit, but I know I wouldn't be nearly as good as half the people out there.
I mean, I was surprised at how good some of the. I mean, you just like waiting in the darkness, like like. I have a really good Premiere to Death Star 2 idea, right? It's just like, it was kind of surprising at how good and refined some of the people were playing in that league. especially some of the weirder formats, like Premiere to Hoth. I'm like, what are you doing here? You just what's the meta? I don't know.
Yeah, that's unfortunate for me. That's something I could not tell you.
Yeah, right. Same. But yeah, I think Roger Lee is a lot of fun. I think it's also just really good that the diversity of events, and I do think that all these roads do sort of lead to open or just increased activity on GEMP is good for all, right? Like the
Yes.
more tables open, the more people are chatting about stuff, the more places to be. I think the Discord, that's kind of one my main hangout place with the game is I think the
Mm-hmm.
Discord's great, right? Because you just have really easy ways to answer questions and kind of get these newbie questions answered if you have some. So, but I think it's great you guys are spread across like every platform, and they're kind of each just gonna has its own little community there as well.
I agree. Like I definitely like that each of them has like their own little theme and everything. Like you can, I mean, but at the same time, like for me, I find it very welcoming stepping into each of the little differences and with the community and everything. Like nobody really is aggressive towards anybody else. Like there's no negativity or anything, which is good about this game because I mean, you go to play a game like any of the other famous popular card games right now, you have a better chance at finding negativity in that community versus this one.
Yeah, and I think this is partially like it's a factor of it being out of print. It's niche. It's a small community, and it's like, hey, we've both come to this point of playing a game that went out of print in 2001. Like, why don't we just be nice to it's
Yeah.
definitely like way different than like I just net decked this and I'm playing Hearthstone or whatever or Magic. I think it's a little bit different because it's a little more intimate of a community. That's the other thing that's really attracted me. Why I've kind of stuck around is it's a nice niche community, right? It's growing, which I think is really good, and there's a diversity of opinions, but it's not hundreds of thousands this dark cold place, which I think sometimes some like the Magic places can be like pretty cold, right?
Yeah, I agree. So I gotta ask this one question. Like, it seems like you have a nice little team that works with you in hosting a lot of the videos. How did you guys come together to do this YouTube channel?
Yeah, I mean, it was very organic because I think I started off just opening Lord of the Rings packs because that was like the game where I could find cheap booster boxes. I was like, oh, look, this is fun, right? And like I do think I'm better at that game than Star Wars, so it's something I like know a little bit more, as far as the meta and stuff. I'm like, oh, this is fun, and then just kind of like Andy Talaga, who's kind of one of my main collaborators. He
Mm-hmm.
started just like watching the stuff, and I was like, oh, this would be interesting if I had Andy on. And then, there's just like a kind of a crew of people. There's a guy named Darth Grader who's really into grading stuff, which, it's not my cup of tea, but it's a perspective, on this.
Mm-hmm.
And then Cam McMillan, who's just really great on sort of he's getting back into playing, but he's kind of a collector. But he was just playing in there's a rookie or a noob premier
Yeah.
only I think, tournament going on, and so he was talking about playing that, and
Yeah.
it's been fun to kind of build this little rotation. And then Jim Colson's kind of like the Godfather, right? Right? It's like
Yeah.
bring in Jim Colson when there's new, but I've been meaning to have another conversation with Jim Colson about Decipher stuff, but I don't know. It's surprising when you ask people for an hour or an hour and a half of their time that they're just like, oh yeah, absolutely, I'd love to come talk about my. And I think that's one of the things is like if you ask people about the things they're interested in, they want to talk about it, right? And
Exactly. And
uh,
like you were saying, the game now has come down to it's a labor of love for a lot of people, and they want to talk about it. They want to share it with the world. Like I have don't have a lot of interaction with Jim Colson outside of watching your shows now, and he surprisingly enough he actually sold me a Queen Amidala from Theed just so I could get it sent out to have Natalie Portman sign it. Like Brian Fred got us talking and everything, and I didn't remember that until I watched your video, and I was like, wait a minute, is that the same guy? And I was like, apparently it is. Like
I
it's
will
good to
just say
see
that
these.
if you want to talk about like storerooms, I think he might have like the most insane collection of just general stuff of all time.
I no doubt. Like some of the stuff he was just showing off, I'm like, I've never seen that. Like I love seeing the big vinyl cards that he had. Like those are just so random. I haven't seen those anything like that in years. And the fact that he kept them, that's amazing.
So one of the things he's doing with Lord of the Rings, is a different Decipher game, but he's collecting every card in every language that was ever printed. So you're talking about like 40,000 plus cards, and he's like 99.9% complete. It's like under 100 cards left.
Wow.
And I'm just like, you're just like a full-time USPS courier there at some point. You're just like nonstop going to the post office. Like that's just so.
It's random.
That's so much.
That is
40,000 because it was printed. Because Decipher, a little history lesson. Decipher is hot off the Star Wars CCG. They're like, we're gonna print, this new game, Lord of the Rings TCG in like 12 languages. So like the first set is in like 12 languages, then like it drops off and off and off. By like the final couple, it's in French, German, and English or something, right? And so, but the first couple is like Swedish and there's a Mandarin. It's like, wow. How do you find this stuff? But anyways, it's really been kind of fun putting together a little crew. And frankly, if anyone listening wants to get involved or, they want to be interviewed about what it's like to play an open, I'm happy to do something. Board Matt is the channel. I'm sure there's, a link somewhere, but, I'm happy to kind of talk with folks. I'm pretty, welcoming, open-minded person. I was a newcomer to the community, 2.5 years ago. So I kind of know how it is. And so don't be shy to reach out. I'm on Facebook or, email, whatever. So happy to kind of, keep bringing new people into the fold. I think that's one of the things people like as well as sort of new voices. And Steve Sanders is another good buddy that I think he ran the Retro League with the PC. He's been great to sort of help with, we've been doing a Star Trek series. That's another game. So, but he's a really good guy as well. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun. Like that's one thing. It's been like kind of social, and I feel like that's also with the PC. You guys have a really good crew kind of running. It's you kind of like feed off each other a little bit, with the energy.
Yeah, I do agree with you there. So let's see what else. So I mean, the reason the big thing here is today is that you won the 2022 Content Creator of the Year along with Kendall Hallman, who was on earlier. How does that feel being recognized for everything that you're doing for the game and as well as all the other games that you're doing?
I'll be honest. I was absolutely surprised and flattered, and it's been. I really appreciate you guys kind of putting stuff like this out there. I told Kendall, he messaged me when it happened. I was like, one of the reasons I started doing this is I listen to your stuff and I listen to Fatty's content. Fatty's actually was probably, I will go down saying, I don't know if anyone's ever listened to Fatty's, but he was actually like the best at this, right? Like, I think he ran out of energy there, but his stuff is way funnier and more charming and charismatic than any of the stuff I'm doing. Sometimes I feel like I'm reading a book report, right? So highly recommend.
I wouldn't say that.
But like Fatty's just, I'm like, he's got like the Imperial Hunks March Madness thing going on. I'm like, this is just funny,
the Jar
right?
Jar video that he put out is a great one.
Yeah.
Fatty is entertaining. Like if you got a half an hour or whatever you want to kill, watch Fatty, just because you're probably, if you understand anything regarding Star Wars, you're probably going to laugh your butt off.
Yeah,
now
absolutely.
But at the same time, though, like your stuff is great because you're putting out a lot of information. You're giving a lot of different looks to the game that a lot of people don't see. Like one of the things that I know I've been trying to do on Holotheatre, for example, is just to get more of the collecting, the retro aspect on there. Not to step on your toes because you're doing a great job or anything.
Sure.
But it's definitely something that I want to look at because there is a market for it. And as someone who is putting out content for the PC, for example, I want to make sure that we hit that market.
And that's the tricky thing, because I understand that, for let's say 18 years of the game being out of print, stuff was like, this card's 5 cents or whatever, right? Like stuff was inexpensive. And then, I was talking with Scott Church over at Category 1 Games. He was kind of saying that like his prices started to increase like, 2017, 18, 19. It was like COVID was an accelerant perhaps, but there's already
Yeah.
kind of a trend happening. And I would attribute that more to like nostalgia. It was people like that were 15 when they played the game, and now they're 35 and they have some cash, and they're like, okay, why don't I get back into this thing? So,
Yeah.
yes, there's definitely a COVID resurgence, but I think there's already kind of these, mechanisms happening where products becoming more scarce, and people just kind of get a little more interested. But I think it's hard to thread the needle where you want to talk about collecting, but you don't want to say like this is expensive and inaccessible. But the thing I always tell people is the really high end collecting stuff, like no one needs a Darth Maul Young Apprentice AI foil, right? Like
If you're a completionist, you do.
right. But like I should say, no one needs it to play, right? Like there's no reason you need that card to play. Like any of the AIs, any of the really high end stuff, like the most expensive deck or card that's maybe meta is what, like a Lord Vader or like an Emperor Luke. I guess the Emperor Luke ultra rares. Those are going to be like the sort of meta stuff, which I think those have been like the same. They've been kind of like $200 a piece or so for a while.
Yeah,
But like,
and I mean, and the nice thing is the PC has made cards to supplement those, which is really nice. I like that. Like, but at the same time, like the Emperors, for example, there's only like one or two decks you're going to see more than 2 or 3 copies of him in a deck. Same with Luke Skywalker, Jedi Knight, which are like the two most popular cards that are really expensive. But like you were saying, like nobody needs a Darth Maul Young Apprentice foil. Nobody needs Imperial class Star Destroyer foil or a Corellian Corvette
right.
foil, which the Imperial class Star Destroyer was like what the number one hardest to get card on your list.
I think that card, I think right now is just like you can't even find it, and there's a couple guys that will give you $2,000 for it. So if anyone wants to sell one,
but those are the people that really want one and to finish out their collection, and I understand that. Like I mean, like I said, going back to what I was saying earlier with like Brian Fred, for example, I was trying to finish up my Japanese collection, and I was able to, and then I decided, you know what, I'm just going to sell it so I can move. But
I know how it goes.
Yeah, being an adult sometimes is good, but sometimes it can be very not fun.
Yeah. And so I guess what I would say to the people that say like, oh, the game's becoming more expensive and it's making it less accessible, I would say one, V cards are absolutely free, and two, most rares are 25 cents. Right? Like 95% of rares are a quarter. Whether it's Shabba's Palace, Cloud City, the Premier stuff, like like Lone Warrior, all these random red cards from Premier.
Yeah,
they're a quarter, right? And so you can still build a deck for $30.
Oh yeah, some of the more popular decks. I mean, if you're going to play open, a lot of the more popular decks run virtual cards. Like I don't know if you realize the deck No Idea They're Coming or No Idea We're Coming. That uses a lot of virtual cards. The I Want That Mac deck uses a lot of virtual cards. Now, but at the same time, if you want to get into those older formats, one, you can play on GEMP where it's free.
Yes, that's the other thing. It is free on GEMP.
Yeah. But I mean, even though some of the cards might be a little expensive, the nice thing is about this community is people are willing to share.
Yeah. I absolutely agree. So I think that like, getting a little more in the collecting stuff, because ultimately like it is the Star Wars custom. It's collecting one of the C's. One of the C's is collecting, right?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay, I was like, wait, is it customizable card game? Collectible card game, right?
Collectible, because then like the CCG is trading card game.
Yeah. But anyways, I just there's always going to be a collecting element. That's why you have foils and AIs, and I think it took Decipher a little bit to figure out how to. I mean, if you look at modern card games, they're really good at creating, like in Magic, you have like the extended and like foils and all this crap where it's like, if you just want to play the game, you don't need the whatever borderless. But we're talking, it was 1997 and they weren't really sure how to create that. There was they're still figuring it out. And I think by like the episode 1 stuff, they figured out with like AIs, right? They're like, oh, actually, 1 in every 4 is going to be this super rare one. So anyways, I think collecting is a really fun part of it. And there's a lot to do with it, and a lot to talk about, but it's not just hoarding. I will say that it's not just hoarding.
Agreed. So I do have to ask, like, For those who are looking to get into creating their own content, following in your footsteps, for example, what advice can you give that person?
Literally, okay, so one, don't stress about a camera. The best camera you have is probably on your phone. I think the first couple of videos, I was like, I bought a web camera and I tried setting it up and a little, I was like, this just didn't work. And then I realized that I have a 10 megapixel iPhone, whatever it is, iPhone 12 or something. That is, so just turn it on and start filming, and just talk. I think that's the first step, is just start. Find something you want to talk about, script it out. I would say invest in a little tripod. They're like $12 on Amazon. Just buy one of those, because you'll save yourself a lot of time of balancing the phone up, and it falls over, and then you're frustrated, you got to reshoot it. So get yourself a tripod, turn your phone on, just start talking about something that's interesting to you. I think the Masani Training Temple, the kid out of not a kid, a young man out of the UK. I think he just talks about stuff, and I think I really enjoy his stuff. And so there doesn't have to be a big barrier to entry for any of this stuff. You can talk about your favorite deck. Like some of the stuff that Andy and I do is it's free, right? We just sit there and we created a deck on GEMP, and we'll walk through the deck. Like, oh, here's your starting package. That just requires a little bit of time. There's a bunch of platforms that you can use. I use StreamYard, which is free to do. So if you want to use StreamYard, but Zoom has options. I'm sure there's a bunch of other programs. Just Google it. But biggest tip is just to start. I'm a big tent guy, as I said. So I think the more people doing this, the better. I think there's no reason to think that me having stuff and Kendall having stuff is cannibalizing each other. It's no, everybody, the more stuff, the more chances it's going to end up in the YouTube algorithm, right? Because that's really what you're battling, or whatever algorithm you're battling. The more eyeballs you can get on it, the more people of that, let's say 100,000 people that played the game in 1998, they're gonna be like, oh, I remember that. That's still happening. How cool. Let me think, look into that. And just leaving that little breadcrumbs there for them to follow, I think is kind of what you want to do. So just start. I started with one subscriber. It was my mom, right? So I guess I do have one fake one. It's just my mom, right? That's the fake one. But
I don't know. I mean, hey, your mom tells one person, that person tells another person, and so forth and so forth and so forth.
Yeah, little did you know, it's actually most of my subscribers are just a knitting group in Escondido, California. It's just a women's knitting group that just it's most of the viewers, just bots, also bots in India. That's the other one. So.
Well, again, I like the content that you're putting out, so I can't wait for any more of it. Before we go, I just want to say again, as the content creator of the year, you will not only get some awards from PC, you'll get some stuff from them, but as one of the recipients of the award, you'll be featured in the Holotheatre Hosts and Heroes packs. Those are AIs created to show off some of the members of Holotheatre, as well as some of the other key members of the PC and the volunteers and such. One of them is, for example, this lovely Jared Napolitano Count Dooku card that you see on the screen right now. So you'll be on a card just like that, put into an official AI card that people can use in the game. Unfortunately, they're not on GEMP just yet. I would love to see them on GEMP. People slinging Jared Napolitano as their Count Dooku and any of the Rise of the Sith decks. But these are cards that if you watch any of the streams from the actual tournaments, you might see yourself on one of the tournaments. So you'll get to pick a card to represent yourself, whether that, like we were saying earlier, is like a General Grievous or any other card that is not taken. So as long as you just send me over a picture of yourself and whatever card you want, we'll get those made. And then you'll be put into packs. Those packs will include non-foil variants of the cards, foil variants of the cards, some V cards, and a few actual Star Wars cards, some good ones too.
Cool.
So, and then we'll get you some of those packs too, and then maybe you can open up those on your channel.
Yeah, that's right there. That's a video. Boom. I'm less stressed for 3 days now. This is two videos a week. It's like every 3 days you have to do one. You're like, oh crap. It's coming up
Believe
again.
Me, I kind of know. Like I do these every week, so But
like,
again, I want to thank you for coming on, Matt. It has been a pleasure talking to you. We got to get you on more at some point, maybe this
absolutely.
year. But before we go, again, if you're looking for more Matt's content, he can be found on YouTube at Board Matt, not BOARD Matt, not like you're bored of gaming or anything. But you can just see your picture right here up at the top panel, and then yeah, you can just go on, check out some of your popular videos. Make sure you like, follow, and subscribe to his stuff. That way you can support him as well. But yeah, I definitely want to thank you for coming on, Matt.
Absolutely. Let's do it again soon, Dan.
I agree. Okay,
All
so
right.
again, I want to thank Kendall for the brief step in that he had, and then that's all we have for this week. Next week, we're going to have Chris Schoenthal to discuss everything about the San Diego Super Open. He is going to be running the event, and as it returns to San Diego for the first time in a couple of years. So until then, everybody, take care, enjoy your week, and enjoy your weekend, and as always, may the force be with you. Good night, everybody. Okay, sir, that's it.